Hi, welcome to SPR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. This is our daily MLB pitching preview show that we do with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, guy who gives us invaluable insights into the upcoming pitching matchups every day. This guy's been a successful professional handicapper for almost 30 years. Right now, we're going to take a look at Friday, June 12th. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
All right, Joe, we're in the heart of the baseball season. How are things going at your website right now, OffshoreInsiders.com, in baseball? Profitable?
Yes, very much so. We've been red hot as of late. Of course, one of the reasons we've been so hot, we had won 7 of 8 days in Major League Baseball because we didn't have any extra inning games. And yesterday we had an extra inning game, and that's been my kryptonite for years. But still, both short-term and long-term, absolutely opening a can of whip butt at OffshoreInsiders.com.
All right, well, I love to hear your insights on what to expect from these pitching matchups, and you take the tough ones, which I really appreciate. I'm going to start right off with the tough one, Tommy Milone, right? We see stuff like this all the time. Guys who are great in the minors can't get it done in the majors, although Malone's a little bit different because just a few years ago, he was a reasonable, actually above average major league starter. But this year, absolutely dominating in AAA, but not getting it done in the majors. And then he came back up last start, bad again. Now he's going to be going on the road against Texas. Texas, a team that's being productive, winning, and profitable. What do we expect from Milone here?
Yeah, it's one of those quad A starters, I think they like to call them. You know, the old Crash Davis syndrome. A guy from my alma mater, Rick Kribda, was the poster child for that. But anyway, definitely a good matchup for Texas. Wandy Rodriguez is pitching very well, 2.55 ERA in his last 4 starts. Now, granted, is that going to last? Of course, that's what people pay me to do. But he is pitching at home, and he should have a pretty good cushion. So it's tough to say that Texas doesn't have a pretty big pitching advantage.
And then Felix Hernandez goes on the road for Seattle against Houston. He had a bad start and then bounced back very nicely as expected, and I think you predicted that as well when we previewed that day. Question is, will he maintain it on the road here? The Mariners are 5-0 in his 5 road starts this year, and on the other side, you know, Oberholzer can be good but generally hittable. If Felix dominates, Seattle probably has some value. What do you think?
Well, Oberholzer has not been very good since he came back from a blister injury that he was sidelined for about a month. Look, when you got Felix Hernandez, it's tough to not state the obvious that more times than not you're going to have a big pitching advantage here. Hernandez always pitches well just about everywhere, and as you said, he's pitching as well on the road this year as he has in just about any other year. Of course, Seattle obviously will be a road favorite, but the pitching matchup, no question about it, it's in Seattle, so then you just got to evaluate some of the other team stuff as well as whether or not it's worth the risk.
But the thing is, if we expect Seattle to win 4 out of 5 road starts from Felix Hernandez, then they have value at -180, right?
That's true, but no, they're not going to be a big favorite because Houston has had a very good year, but at the same time, Houston's seemingly regressing to their mean. So this might be a time to fade Houston. I'll admit, a little earlier in the year, I got burnt when Houston went in a little bit of a slump. I thought that they were finally going to regress. You know, Houston is agreed by most people. They're one heck of a young team, but we thought they were at least a year away from contending. And I still think that, you know, does Houston have enough veteran talent to keep it together this year? Probably not. So I think Houston's a pretty good go against this year. And you're right. You know, Felix Hernandez is always a one heck of a pitcher. And when you're talking about a heck of a pitcher going against a so-so pitcher in a Houston team that may finally be regressing to the mean, he probably is some pretty good value.
And then another game that'll have a big road favorite line, Dodgers at San Diego. Clayton Kershaw starting, and we've talked about him in these shows earlier in the year. He was very clearly overvalued in the beginning of the year, but he is starting to dominate. The Dodgers have now won 5 out of his last 6 starts. His last 3 starts have been awesome. And if he's about to turn it up, as we saw recently with Corey Kluber, you know, he might be a pitcher with good value, even as a big favorite. What do you think?
And it's a good analogy because Kershaw, like Kluber, obviously Kershaw has a little bit, you know, longer of a resume. He's been dominating a little bit longer, but both guys were coming off just absolutely fantastic years, years that are going to be tough to match. And what happens, that pitchers usually come out of the gate slow the next year, and then they finally start pitching well. That's been the case here. Although Despaigne had been a big splits pitcher, now he's been getting knocked around at both home and on the road as of late. So, yeah, that is a humongous mismatch, and it's going to be one of the biggest road favorites of the year for sure. So, again, it gets down to the question of value, but clearly another unequivocal pitching advantage for the road team.
And then Washington is probably going to be a road favorite as well, but probably just a very small road favorite, maybe a modest road favorite at the highest. Jordan Zimmermann starting. He has been very reliable and excellent this year. He is coming off of a subpar start, but the question is, was that an aberration? My sense is that it was. And Mike Fiers on the other side, we'll give him credit. I was down on him at the beginning of the year, and he did have a terrible April, but May, June, he's actually been pretty good. Not necessarily great, but definitely good. But Washington, the lineup's productive with Zimmermann going. Maybe Washington will have value as a road favorite. What do you think?
They will. Fiers, even by his own admission, said he kind of had to fight through a lot of his pitches in his last start. Didn't even make it through the 5th inning. So, he only gave up 2 runs, I believe, but he didn't have all that great of an outing, and it may or may not be, related. I know a lot of people think it's a big intangible when a player plays in his home state or a pitcher plays in his home state. In the case of Jordan Zimmermann, he's from Wisconsin, and he's pitched some of his best baseball not only against the Brewers but at Miller Park. He's got a 1.50 ERA at Miller Park, and then over his career, he's given up 8 runs in 30 and 2/3 innings to Milwaukee. So he's always pitched very well at Milwaukee and pitched extremely well in his home state. So this would be a case where, Jordan Zimmermann, everything seems to be in his direction.
All right, so we got 3 road favorites there, Seattle, the Dodgers, and Washington. I think it's probably a good bet that at least 2 of those 3 win, right, Joe?
Yeah, they probably will win, but again, when you're laying 200 on the road, you better win. So I'm not a big fan necessarily of road favorites. A lot of times I try to find some value in home underdogs, but the bottom line is I try not to approach any game with a big bias, but keep in mind that once you're starting to lay 160, 170 on the road, that's very significant.
Right. Okay, and then Johnny Cueto starting. I have been on the record as saying that I'm expecting Cueto's health issues to resurface at some point in the near future. Last start, though, awesome. Second start back from inflammation, and he was great. He proved me wrong at least in that start. But Cosart's out for the year for Cincinnati. Cincinnati's having health issues on offense, and Jason Hamill on the other side has also been excellent. Do you think that this might be a spot to fade Cincinnati and Cueto?
Well, I think for some of the reasons you stated, it might be a very good underplay,
right.
Hamill, but as you said, Hamill's pitched very well. He's got 8 quality starts in his 11 outings, and he hasn't gotten much run support. Now, I do think that sometimes when you talk about run support for a specific pitcher, that can be a little bit of an aberration. But again, you can't fall in love with either one of these offenses. And if you're saying that Johnny Cueto is the lesser of the 2 pitchers, or not necessarily the lesser of the 2 pitchers, but situationally might be the lesser of the 2 pitchers here, then you got to like the under even when the total is going to be low. Of course, we're talking about Wrigley Field, where you want to look at the wind direction and the wind speed. But a low-scoring game is a definite possibility here.
Okay, and then the last thing I want to ask you about is the Yankees in Baltimore, right? Pineda against Jimenez. Now, the Yankees are going to be limiting Pineda's workload, which I think is a very smart thing to do, a smart move. So I expect them to, not necessarily falter as I was expecting if they didn't do that. And, so he's been pitching pretty well, and I think we're expecting a good start from here. And then Jimenez, the key to betting, obviously, is to anticipate what's going to happen in the future, not to look back and to describe. Ubaldo Jimenez, he's had a good year, but in his last start, he had some control issues. Does that indicate that maybe going forward he might struggle a little bit? I'm thinking maybe so. Although I was down on Jimenez at the beginning of the year, I was proved wrong. But maybe in this start, the Yanks might have a big starting pitching edge, bigger than it looks at first glance on paper. What do you think?
Probably because we've talked about it. Jimenez throughout his career tends to be a very streaky guy, and the fact that he's had pitched fairly well and is now coming off a so-so outing, more so than most pitchers in baseball. This might be a good time to ride him because, like I said, he goes in those little stretches where he looks fantastic and then goes in some stretches where he looks terrible. So probably, a good spot to fade him. But then again, you may want to consider the over that Pineda, hasn't done all that well with 6 days rest. I mean, he's got a 4.50 ERA, and again, not really statistically significant enough, but it's not like either one of these pitchers are all that dominant, so we could see a pretty high-scoring game.
Really? You're not. I like when Pineda's good. I think he's great. It's just the problem is he has health issues, and so he can't maintain that for long stretches of time. But I'm kind of high on him in general when he's healthy.
Well, you do have to. They flat out said, you are correct. They flat out said they're going to limit his pitching. So whether or not even if he pitches well, he's not likely he's going to pitch into the 8th inning. So you kind of got to handicap the bullpens as well. And pitchers tend to like to stay in a comfort zone, so we're going to see how he does with the extra rest. You know, so many pitchers, they don't like it when they're skipped a spot in the rotation or if there's a couple rainouts. Now, if you're asking me who's got the better pitching edge, yeah, I would say the Yankees. But again, you know, I know a lot of handicappers talk about the importance of handicapping bullpen. I think this game more than most.
Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Great thoughts as always. Is there anything else you'd like to bring to our attention for Friday, June 12th?
Well, you do have Alex Wood, a nice young pitcher who's pitching pretty well. So I would lean towards going with him, I should say. He's got a 2.00 ERA over his last 4 starts. So we know, you know, he's part of the Braves' future, and he is pitching pretty well.
Okay, Joe Duffy, thanks so much.